Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would the two of you mind introducing yourselves?
Yeah, I'm Dave Suzuki
Ray McCaffrey
of Churchburn. What's going
Churchburn.
on?
that
And would you like to mention some of the other bands you've been in?
Spent 11 years in Vital Remains. Did a short stint with Deicide, and that's about it.
I spent a good amount of time when I was a kid in the early 90s with a band called Rancid Christ, death metal band out of Providence / Worcester. Then a good amount of time in a doom metal project called Sin of Angels for about 9 years. I also played drums for Grief. I was actually the last drummer that they had in a long line of drummers. And now I'm here in Churchburn.
Excellent. And how would you describe Churchburn? What kind of music would you say Churchburn makes?
I mean, we don't have any set, like, I would say we don't have like a set goal of what to make, but as long as it has a certain feel to it, a certain ominous feel to it, we don't go into the writing process saying, all right, we need to make sure it sounds like this or that. But there is definitely a certain atmosphere that we do like to have surrounding the songs, which is probably, a darker, ominous feeling. That's the best way I could probably describe it.
Yeah, I mean, I spent so many years playing a really brutal, fast style of death metal. I just wanted to slow it down and create something more crushing and dark and heavy, like early 90s doom death metal bands like My Dying Bride, so like Winter, it just
something that you didn't have to really think about like too much, but just more feel, a certain feel to it. That like when you turned it on, you knew it was a Churchburn. You know it's a Churchburn song.
And am I correct in saying that the two of you are the founders of Churchburn?
Correct.
And how did the two of you meet?
Oh man, I mean, I met Dave years and years and years ago when he first came from Las Vegas when he joined Vital Remains. I think I met him at my old band Rancid Christ and Vital Remains used to share a space in Attleboro. When Dave came, I met him there, and we just kind of always stayed in touch, or we're around the same shows. Just always were real friendly and hung out. And
this is going 1996 was when I moved here. So it's been a while, man.
I mean, it was more like it was kind of a kindred friendship, with our love of music, but, silly shit too.
And what led the two of you to decide to found a project together and to play music together?
So probably around the end of 2010, the beginning of 2011, I was done with my project Sin of Angels. I had just, that band had run its course to where it was what it was. It wasn't going any further. There were, some problems with personnel and everything like that. It just started feeling like a real job. So I kind of stopped that. But while that was happening, I still wanted to play really heavy music, but the direction that Sin of Angels was kind of going more into the psych doom, more psychedelic stuff, and stoner rock, which I like a lot. It doesn't interest me in playing. So I just had this idea one day that I was going to do Churchburn. I literally just put the name together and put up this little graphic on Facebook, and I was like, coming soon. And Dave, who at the time he lived around the corner from me, he had seen it, messaged me. He's like, hey, what is this? And I was pretty much, I don't know. I was like, it's just me. I don't have any plays. I don't even have an idea of what I'm going to do. I was like, I don't know how to, I was like, I don't know how to play any instruments except drums. I was like, but I'm going to figure it out. and Dave come over and we started, shooting the shit. And, he pretty much, you were done with your time, with Vital. He'd been out of Vital for like 4 years at the time, I think.
Yeah.
And, he was ready to play something, or at least,
Pick it back up again.
Yeah, pick it back up again. And we both talked about what we wanted to do. We didn't want it to be complicated. We didn't want, we wanted it to be fun, but we had a certain, like you said before, we really loved the really heaviness of Doom with the death angle, and just really simple, kind of in your face, but still keep it kind of beautiful and melodic when it could, but just really something you didn't have to think about, but at the same time crushing, And we just started talking in 2011, and he came over with his guitar, and at the time I had my drum set up in my living room, and we just kind of messed around with riffs. It actually took a little while to kind of get something, something kind of going. Like not going, but like, we had so many ideas, or so many, we were just, messing around. That initial get together, it was probably 6 months of just kind of floating ideas around.
Sorry, Dave, did you want to say something, or?
No, I was just gonna, the whole songwriting process was new to me, because usually I basically helped Tony Lazzaro write all the Vital Remain songs from Forever Underground up to Icons of Evil, where he would write the bass of the song, and afterwards I would put my own stuff into it. So having to write a complete full song now, it was really kind of overwhelming, because there's just so much stuff you can do with music, and you want it somewhat original, so it did take a while to kind of figure out that process of writing riffs and putting them all together. It's still hard today. I really hate it, but with the stuff that we do, that we've already written, and I'm proud of the stuff that we've done, but it's a tedious process as we're going through it.
Oh, the reason too, sometimes that there's some lengths between releases, because we're picky about and I don't want to say we're picky about what we write, but it takes a while for us to, like, we'll sit on something and think about it, and and we'll rewrite it, or it has to be perfect for us.
Sorry, just to clarify what you said, Dave, when you said that the process is difficult, is it just the possibilities of where the song can go? Is that what makes it difficult?
Well, I think for me, the difficult thing is writing a riff, and I think the whole process of making riffs to make a complete song is just, it's really difficult for me, because there's so many different ways you can construct a song, and I think that's what gets in my head, and I don't want it to, if something's not right, then it's almost like scrapping it and starting over. But
believe me, there's a lot of phone calls back and forth when we think we're done, completing a song. He's like, no, I thought about it. We got to do it this way. And then we get it done. No, I was playing around with it. It's got to be this way. So I think it's just a process. I think it's just a process of, like I said, I think, it's got to be perfect.
We're trying to come up with our own spin of a song, that's, you try not to take from other bands as much, or ideas and stuff that you've already heard, but it's so difficult not to do that these days. So that's why.
Now, do songs typically start with riffs for you guys? Is the riff the starting point?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Oh, when you guys start a song, is the riff the starting point?
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, we fuck around.
Yeah, there's some ideas usually that, we always have like a bunch of ideas in the tank, from either a year ago, 2 years ago, when we first started, something we revisit, or usually when we stop practicing, we'll start jamming on something that, either Dave or Timmy or Derek has, and we'll just jam on that for like 10, 15 minutes and be like, oh, let's kind of put that in the tank, and then we'll revisit it when we're writing. Sometimes we remember it, sometimes we don't. We try to record everything that we do, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way.
Yeah, if it sticks, if you remember it like an hour later, then it's something we can revisit. But if not, then it's like,
Where'd that go?
It's gone.
Do a lot of your songs start with jams?
Yeah. A lot of the songs that you hear, they weren't like premeditated, like, I had the song written. They start with just kind of jamming out on a few riffs here and there, and then seeing what kind of goes together, and
Yeah, I think a lot of it, we stumble on to something. We'll just have, I guess, we'll be jamming around, and then by accident, something will come up, and that all of us are in sync for that one or 2 seconds or whatever of music, and then we start focusing on that little accident. And I think that's a lot of it comes from that. Just like really out of the blue parts, that
Timmy's really actually good with that. Timmy we'll present the song, and then Tim, the rhythm guitarist, he'll stop presenting alternates of what we just played, and sometimes they really stick, and sometimes we move on from that. But
yeah, I mean, it's good.
It's usually a pretty organic. I mean,
it's good to have a different set of ears of what their perspective of what they're hearing, and they can either say, how about this? How about we do it this way? And usually it works because it's something that we, didn't think of at the time.
Is your writing process pretty democratic in terms of people contributing and coming up with ideas?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, none of us are shy at saying, hey, that doesn't work. Let's try it this way, or nah, that's, Dave doesn't come in and say, this is what it is, and this is how we're playing it. He had Dave writes the majority of, what you hear, but it goes through a process through all of us. He says, this is what I'm hearing, and we play it, and then, we go around the room, hey, what do you, sometimes it's like, no, this is great. And then sometimes, I'll put my spin on it. Timmy will have a spin on it. Derek will have a say. And then, it goes around and around until we're all like, yep, this is what it is.
Yeah, exactly.
And when is a song done? When are you guys ready to release it into the world?
Yeah.
When the boss says it's done.
No, I think it's like you can tell, I think. Because we've had to shorten songs. We feel like it just drags on a little too long, or we have to switch apart so that we can make a closing riff. But I think we know whether if it's just keeps going on too long, or if it's not long enough, if it needs a little.
I know when it's done when I don't hear from Dave for a couple of days.
that I'm all right with it.
Yeah, if I don't hear from him for a couple of days with either, a message or a phone call.
I was just thinking, man.
Yeah, hey man, I was thinking. Now here we go. But it's usually, and it's he always teases me about that, but in the long run, it's for the the best. It's always for the best. What serves the song best.
And typically, how long does it take for you guys to write a song?
Forever. Forever.
It's been what? It's been 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years, and we have, we have close to maybe 15, 20 songs.
Yeah.
Where other bands, they have, albums and albums where,
yeah, I think it just all depends on what our mindset is. If we have that creative thing going on with the music and everything.
I'll give you a little perspective. So the song on the newest album, Swallowed by Dust, we started writing that song in various variations before we started recording our second album. And it wasn't done until, we were just about, a month or two before we started recording Genocidal Right, where the song Scarred on the album was more, it just kind of flowed real quickly. And I think it was because we were already in that writing mode, and, that song came together a little quicker. But some of our songs take, they kick around for a couple of years, rewriting, writing. Sometimes it goes right back to the, square one, or, it's gone through so many changes. But I don't think there's any, we don't have a set time that says, all right, we're going to write this song. We got a couple of weeks to do it.
Yeah, I think it just happens when it does happen. Which, it's not a good thing, but because I'd like to continue to just have that flow of music happening. But
I think it's a good thing. I think it's the song is done when we say it's done, and not when we say it's done, but when we feel it's done and it's ready to be presented to the public. Our vision of what it is.
Yeah.
So it takes what it takes.
Out of curiosity, how many times a week do you guys usually meet for band practice or coming up with material and stuff like that?
So we meet once a week to rehearse, but when we're starting to write, or we're starting, we got the ideas flowing. Usually Dave and I will meet, a couple times a week, and but band rehearsals once a week. So we get the sets together, what we're going to play, keep sharp, and then during the writing process we'll kick it up. Dave and I will usually kick it up, a couple times a week.
Cool. So let's talk about this new album. On November 5th, Genocidal Right was released through Translation Loss. We spoke a lot about your songwriting process and how songs come together. Can you tell me just a little bit about this specific album and what your intentions were going into it and how this album came together?
Swallowed by Dust, Genocidal, they were older songs that we've had for a longer period of time. They don't sound anything how they were when we first started writing it. Basically, in January 2020, I had to go back to Vegas because my father was dying. And after he passed away, January 16th, I came back with a different mindset with everything in life. Everything changed. And as for the songs that we had, I wasn't happy with them. I told Ray, I was like, we gotta do something. We gotta sit down and kind of take the songs apart and put them back together. And that happened. It happened quickly, right? When that was happening. So from like February until we went into the studio, it was only a few months, and we had all that material basically rewritten, and for the better. I think it
Yeah,
definitely needed the changes.
When Dave called me, I think we had spoke even before he got back from Vegas, and he's like, "Hey man, some of these songs, I'm not kind of happy with." And I agreed. I said, "Yeah, when we're playing them, I kind of don't get that vibe, that." We were both kind of on the same page, but we hadn't talked about it yet because obviously things were going on in Dave's life. But we were getting close to that ready to record stage, and there were certain things that I wasn't happy with. David called me. He said things he wasn't happy with. So during the lockdown, the lockdown, COVID lockdown, Timmy and Derek weren't really available to get to practice. So me and Dave, we would just get together, and it was easier. There's only two of us in the practice space, so we could stay apart, etc. And we just kind of, one by one deconstructed the songs and, put them back together the way that we heard them, and then presented them. When it was time to get together with the other two guys, we said, "Hey, surprise!" We rewrote most of the songs, and we showed them to Timmy and Derek. And then Timmy and Derek had some ideas and some input, and they went through a couple more changes. And Swallowed by Dust and Genocide of Right came together as what you hear on the album right now.
Yeah.
First of all, Dave, sorry about your father.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
If you could compare this album to the previous two, what would you say makes it different? How the changes in mentality that you described, how did that affect the way this album sounds?
I think this album is more aggressive. I think it has the overall Churchburn, like we said previous, like it's very important to us to have, if you turn on the song and it's a Churchburn song, like we have an overall atmosphere. But I think this album, just the way it's put together, the way the songs are written, I think it's overall, it has a more aggressive feel than the previous two albums. I mean, that's how I feel.
Yeah, I think the previous ones are more, I don't know if it's subdued.
I think Hymns of Misery, I think, is a little bit more darker. It has a darker edge to it because of some of the sounds on the album. I feel that's a little bit more darker. The first album, I think, is like more of an introduction. Hey, this is who we are. Primitive writing. The first outing, but I think Genocide of Right, how this stands out is just it's really more aggressive. Like there's more of an attack on the songs compared to the other two.
Well, really, I think also was the influence of my father passing that I could feel it when I listened to these songs, which really didn't have effect of the two songs like Swallowed by Dust and Genocide of Right. But like, I think afterwards, especially with Scarred, I think that, because that's about my father too. It has that overwhelming sense of, I don't know, it's I can hear myself losing somebody that I love.
Yeah, it's definitely a personal
album. Whereas the other albums, it's just like we were just doing a thing, writing songs, and it really not having an emotion attached to it.
Well, I think there was some emotions attached to it, emotion to the song, but a different emotion. Like this definitely had a different emotion for you.
Yeah, it just
attached.
It's a heavier album for me. I don't know musically, but musically this album is just more it's maybe ferocious. It's less doomy and yeah, it's hard to fucking explain.
Yeah, I think, the other two songs were written, and gone through rewrites, and with Dave coming back, definitely have definitely have a different mindset. But when Scott came together, I remember when we were writing that, they came together quick because of just the raw emotions that were in the room at the time. With Dave just losing his dad, and even in the studio, recording that song, there was just a sense of a different sense of raw emotions compared to the previous album. The previous albums definitely had some feelings of what the songs were and what we wanted, but it definitely different, a different atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
Would you say that this album is a little bit more immediate than the previous two?
A little bit. I'm sorry. What was it?
More immediate in terms of the way it hits the listener. I know it's hard for you guys to get into the head of someone who isn't part of the process, but that's kind of what it sounds like to me.
It's more immediate.
Yeah.
It's more like in your face, or as far
yeah, like
as...
kind of like it hits you a little bit faster. Like it's more.
Yeah, I think it's more. I think it's a little bit more aggressive. I think we took a more aggressive stance on how to present this album.
Yeah, because like before, like when we first started, we're like, we don't want to do any blast beats. We don't like, or any like fast beats or whatever, But as time wore on, like it just kind of crept back in,
We wanted to, experiment a little bit more with it, and to kind of change it up a little bit, kind of, so kind of speak to the bands that we're not just a slow band. We can do this stuff, and we thought it was. I don't want to say, hey, okay, it's time to flip on the switch, but I think during the writing we were like, all right, let's show a little bit more of our writing style, that we can still present a heavy as fuck, doomy feel, but we can throw in this this little spice of aggression into it, and I think that's what I think the aggression just kind of seeped into all the songs.
Speaking of aggression, you guys had a few friends stop by to contribute guest vocals. Do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, sure. So while we were writing this album, we a couple of years ago, I had a friend pass away, Todd Laskowski, who I was in a band with in the 90s called Rancid Christ, and we had written this song called Sin of Angels. It was on the demo. And then later on, when we started the band Sin of Angels, that's how the name came to be. So I had this idea. I said, I'd like to do something on the album to kind of honor Todd. He was a great friend. He was a great musician, great songwriter. He also went on to do, he was in a band out of Worcester called Warhorse. And I just had this idea to do this, to do that song, kind of revamp it, and during that process, I had the idea to talk about, not talk about, I had the idea to contact John McEntee from Incantation, who has been a long time friend. He's been a huge supporter of a lot of the stuff Dave and I do. So I reached out to him. He was a fan of Rancid Christ back in the day as well. So when I presented it to him and why I wanted to honor Todd, we're going to do this, he was more than happy to contribute. He said absolutely, right off the bat. So when we recorded the song, he was very down to do it. And John's a huge supporter of the underground as well, as we all know.
Tell me a little.
Andy Grant, Andy Grant of the Vomit Arsonist.
Yeah.
He came on, did some backing vocals as well, and he also contributes all the the dreariness in the background, all the
dark ambient.
unrelenting, destruction that's always in the background of all three of our albums, you know? He's like the unofficial fifth member.
Fifth member, yeah.
So Andy contributes some of the soundscapes and the atmospheric parts.
Yeah, he did
Yeah,
all of them. Yeah,
Yeah, he did all of them.
he basically, we gave him the songs, and then he basically made a soundtrack for every song that we did.
Yep.
Regardless if we used it or just used, that's what we did.
Samples.
We would use it where we needed his input in our songs.
Yeah, Andy will always show up with, like, we'll give him a copy of the album, or at least all the songs, and he'll come up with the whole album's worth, and from start to finish. It's not like pieces. He'll be like, hey, this is what I hear in the album, and it's a whole, you know, it's a whole piece along with the album. What we do is we sit down and we take pieces where we need them.
Tell me a little bit about the recording of the album. Where did you guys end up going?
So we were going to go, our plan was to go to Machines with Magnets again. But I recorded drums for my other band, DNR, at a friend's little home studio recording place, and
He has like an upstart studio, like he's trying to get a studio together. And I mean, he went out. It's not like a, you know, little 4-track. He's got all the bells and whistles of, you know, a major studio. You know, it's something he was throwing his hat into.
yeah,
David called me and said, hey, you know, I'm doing this thing with DNR, and I was like, yeah, send me. You know, it first started out as, hey, maybe we can get
pre-production
out of this before we go into Machines. And I was like, yeah, man, send me what you got from the DNR sessions. And, you know, Dave would send me stuff, and I'm like, yeah, it sounds good. Sounds kind of, you know, it sounded demo-ish. And I'm like, yeah, it's kind of cool. And then as it went on, he would send me more of the DNR sessions, and they were getting better. You know, they were getting better, a lot better. And so Dave and I sat down. His name's James
Gazzaro.
Jamie Gazzaro. Yep, Jamie Gazzaro.
What's a studio?
The last skateboarder in Attleboro. But he had an upstart studio, and Dave, you know, was like, hey, you know, I think we could get some pre-production, like really good pre-production out of this before we go to the Machines. And I was like, you know what, I think it's a great idea. And so we talked to Jamie. He was psyched about doing it. And this album is only his second thing, not even album, like the second recording he's ever done. So as we go in, we start getting sounds the first day. We're going to do drums, you know, and things are sounding great. I was like, wow, you know, this is fantastic. And Dave came in, started laying down guitar tracks, and things started really sounding really good. So we had the idea. I had reached out to Machines at the time, and I said, hey, listen, you know, we got a friend that's going to do, you know, kind of like a pre-pro of the songs. I said, but if, you know, we got a good recording, could it be possible that we could bring it to mix? And they were, you know, Machines was like, yeah, absolutely. You know, Seth Manchester, who had engineered our last album, was like, yeah, absolutely, man. And then as we went on, though, we started just hearing sounds that were not like a pre-production studio.
Yeah, no, I think Jamie took it upon himself to he studied a lot, watched a lot of YouTube on how to do this, how to do that, how to get this type of sound or what not to do. And so he was doing a lot of homework during our sessions, and every week, because we go there, I think every weekend.
We were there every weekend. Like it was we couldn't record during the week. All of us, you know, have, you know, major jobs, so we would use the weekends to go and record all our parts, and then you know, fine tune the mixes and stuff like that. And then we did all the mixings on the weekends too. And it was I mean, it just came together. I mean, there were some moments where we were like, where, there'd be some arguments or there would be some disagreements on, what's going on, but it was for the best. I mean, Jamie really knocked it out of the park. He if there was something that he didn't know, or he was, I don't want to say confused about, or he just, he was unsure of, he would go out and study. He would call other engineers. He would, he'd watch videos, and then we got back and he would have an answer. And we were impressed with that we got to the point where I think what we were hearing, I think Dave and I both were like, I think this could be a release quality recording.
Yeah. Well, I think also the time that it took to record this album helped with all the parts, all the solos, because basically we only had the music down for the recordings, like all the vocal parts. The solos weren't even a thought yet during these sessions. But having the time it was actually a luxury to have this much time to record an album.
Absolutely.
Instead of having a weekend or a week, which I don't think it would have came out
the way
anything. Yeah, it would have never come out the same way as this album did.
Yeah, Jamie was really cool. He was like, it takes as long as it takes. I'm here to, do this. He was very open to the opportunity, and he wanted to do everything in his power to make it perfect. Like I said, when we got to the mixing stage, there was some times where we were like, ooh, maybe this is a little beyond his scope, but he turned it around within a weekend. Like I said, he would call friends that were engineers of his, or watch some, go online, watch some videos, like for hours and hours. Like he'd record with us, and we'd see him the next day, and sometimes he'd be like, I've been up all night just talking to people and studying videos. And we're like, we're coming in fresh with coffees and pizza. We're like, all right, great. But it did afford us a luxury to really sit down with this album and get it the way we wanted.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some cool stuff that happened on the album too. I mean, I remember Dave, I'd pull up to get Dave, and Dave's coming out with a banjo. And I was like, hell no. Like, what? A banjo? Like, hell no. What are we doing here? I was like, what's going on? And Dave would just look at me like he always does and say, hey, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. It'll be fine. And I'd be like, all right, man. All right. And then, he did that banjo part.
I don't think a lot of people know that.
Yeah, a lot of people don't know that.
Yeah, maybe now they will, but
you have to tell me which song it was on, because it completely went over my head.
Unamendable absence. So
yeah.
the
little interlude,
the interludes
the
in the background that sound like a Spanish guitar, right?
There's I using a classical guitar and the banjo on that track.
There should have been a picture of my face when Dave came out of his house. I was just like, right? I was like, what are we doing? I was like, we going bluegrass, brother? I was like, what's happening? Like, I know we want to try some different stuff, but, and the EBO.
Yeah, Timmy had this little thing called an EBO, which I've never used.
that changed.
Yeah, he tried fucking around with it at practice, but so
Did it work out? The EBO didn't work out?
No, it did.
Oh, yeah.
I had to tell Dave, I'm like, we can't have EBO on every song. It was Dave just started. Dave picked it up, figured it out in 2 seconds, and then next thing you know, he was like playing the songs in EBO. I was like, yo, man. I was like, what are we doing?
Yeah,
that electronic album?
That whole track, Unamendable Absence, was like a whole experimental thing. So there was all EBO, banjo, and the classical guitar. That's it. So, but it was just a nice added touch of atmosphere. I don't know, that we've never done before.
Dave and I always have run a joke that, and all the albums, it's smoke and mirrors. Smoke and mirrors, man.
The flashbang.
Yeah, the flash.
So
But it was a great experience. It was a great experience with Jamie. His studio is called the Red Room in North Attleboro, or Attleboro, right next to it's near the Sturdy Hospital, which was good because there was some nights that, man, definitely getting our heart rate up. So we probably had to go there. But it was a great experience, man, and it was a great experience for him as it was getting close to the final mix, and then he was able to work with Brad Boatwright out in Audio Siege. He was happy to sending out the music to him and talking to him for a little bit, whatever it was. And, he was really happy, and from this, hopefully he continues, and I know he's got some work lined up now. Really good guy, really good guy.
So Brad Boatwright comes up a lot on this podcast. He works with a lot of heavy bands. Can you tell me what?
The guy's a master.
And he has some kind of like ILM connection, right? Like, or LucasArts or something like that. Doesn't he have some kind of a?
I'm thinking he's a Grammy winner now, right?
Okay, maybe that's what I'm thinking of.
Yeah, I think he's a Grammy award winner or an Academy Award winner. I know it's one of them. And now it's like I was like, when after it came out, I was like, oh, we might have to take the presses back and be like Brad Boatwright, Grammy Award winner. Yeah. That's awesome for him. He's great, man. That guy's awesome. Nice dude too. He's done 2 of our albums, a bunch of friends' albums. Yeah. Anything heavy that anybody's listened to, he's probably touched.
Right.
And what do you say he brought to the sound of this album and brought to Churchburn sound?
The thickness.
Yeah. Yeah. He was able to take what Jamie did and the notes that we sent him and was able to pull out the sound that we were looking for. And he's really easy to work with. He's super nice. And he's, he definitely gets heavy, you know what I'm saying? And the thing that's cool is as long as you give him, clarity and, clear notes, and he'll come through. Like the first album we did with him, which was None Shall Live, he did it in one pass. Like usually, you got a couple passes. Like we got the first pass back from him on that album, and Dave, who was like
picky,
really picky. Like I was waiting for calls from Dave, like, all right, this isn't it. We got to do this. He called me. He was like, nah, man, I love it. I was like, wow, that's awesome. And he was able to get that in, one pass. This one, it took 2 passes. And there was just some, and the only reason I think there was just some, logistic errors on our part, not being clear on certain things. But he sent the second pass back, and it was perfect. And he was able to round out the sound of what we were looking for. Really bring out the heaviness of the drums and tone and stuff.
Mm.
And this is your first album for Translation Lost, right?
Correct. Yeah.
How did they get involved with the release?
So Drew and I had been talking for a little while. He was interested in doing the second album with us, but we had already committed to Armageddon Shop. Ben Barnett from Drop Dead, who's a lifelong friend, huge supporter, one of the greatest guys on earth. Anybody that's familiar with Drop Dead, all them guys are as solid as they come. Ben is a huge supporter and probably a staple in the underground music scene. And he had put out our first 2 albums. So Drew had been a fan. Like first and foremost, Drew Jurgensen Jurgen's been a fan of the album and had asked. He'd like to get involved, and we were like, well, yeah, that'd be great. We're already doing something. This is already going out with Ben. That's the second album, None Shall Live. And he was always like, all right, later on, something happens, and I'd really like to be involved. I'm like, all right, that's awesome. So as this got closer and COVID hit, I started talking with Ben, and it was clear that, Ben, was, in the midst of re-releasing some Drop Dead albums, their new album, a couple other releases, and COVID kind of like put a crunch on everything. I won't say what album, what band it was, but he had just released one of the bands on their label, and the band can't go on tour, so he's stuck with a plethora of stock. So I had just asked him right out as a friend. I said, "Hey Ben, would it be less of a pain in the ass if you didn't do the record?" And he was like, "It's not a pain in the ass, but," I said, "I have other avenues to source." And he's like, "Yeah, man." He kind of gave us the blessing, and I started talking with Drew. Drew was super interested. We got on a call and hammered out some details, and and Drew also contacted Ben to make sure everything was on the up and up. He didn't want to step on any toes because he really respects Ben, and everything worked out the way it did, and here we are.
So at the time we're having this conversation, the album has been out for a week. Have you seen the reactions or heard back from people about what they think about the album?
Yeah, I've only heard like a few reviews that are mainly positive, that they like the new album.
It's always good when you have positive reviews. So far, the album's gotten some pretty positive reviews, which is always good. I haven't seen anything negative yet. I'm sure there, with everybody, nothing's perfect. It's not a taste for everybody, but so far the album's been very well received.
Do you think
makes us happy?
Do you think it took people a while to come around to what Churchburn was, as opposed to what they expected Churchburn to be, based on Dave's history with Vital Remains? Because I do remember when Churchburn was first announced, there were a lot of people in the underground, especially death metal fans, who were taken aback by the fact that Dave was working on a project that was mostly like death doom or slow crushing music, as opposed to the kind of music that he'd been associated with in the past. But do you think at this point, album number 3, like that's gone away and people know more or less what to expect from you guys?
That's not you, man.
I don't know. I still have friends, like I'm doing solos for like that, like brutal death metal bands this year, and I don't know. It's not something in me to write something like the stuff that I do with Vital, like the fast stuff. I think drumming is one thing. I love playing fast.
He's always pushing me faster,
Which I'm proud of. Fucking
like faster.
Well, just in terms of accepting Churchburn for what it is, as opposed to people wanting it to be. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah. Go ahead. Yeah, you got you.
Sorry about that. Just in terms of people accepting Churchburn for what it is, as opposed to what their expectations may have been in the beginning, do you think like people have come around to like it's not as much of an issue as it might have been previously?
I mean, I think in the beginning, when people started, hearing that Dave, I mean, and there's a lot of people still out there that don't still know that Dave's doing this. Like we get, emails all the time that, "Oh, I didn't know Dave was doing something, and I thought he was working in a convenience store somewhere." And so in the beginning,
he looked familiar.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So in the beginning there was some. There wasn't any pushback. There was a lot of there were a lot of people that were happy that Dave was still doing something, but there was a small crowd, and and we were when we first sat down and talked about this, I told Dave, I said, you're going to anticipate that for many years you were doing this, and now we're going to do this, so there's going to be a small section of the underground that doesn't get it, and we still get the emails, or you'll see on a comment section somewhere of Dave, come back to death metal. Death metal needs you. Like, death metal's fine. Death metal doesn't need Dave Suzuki. They're fine. Death metal's fine. It's thriving, and he's still doing great work. I believe. I mean, it's a different work than brutal, fast, technical death metal, but he's still shredding where he can, and I think in a more tasteful, in my humble opinion, I think in a more tasteful way. I might be a little biased, but it's, but yes. So I think now there's a more acceptance of what we're doing, and a more as it gets out more. People are just happy to see that he's playing, or can come see him play, or pick something up where he's playing on. But yes, there's still a small segment of the underground that does, they wish for the old days where Dave was just playing 100 miles an hour, shredding out leads and stuff. But it's never been, I've never noticed it to be, like a bum out, you know what I'm saying? I mean, I get it.
Yeah, hopefully they come around. I mean, it's all music.
Yeah.
But it's.
I mean, we're an extreme metal band. I mean, we may not be playing, 1,000 miles an hour, but we can fit on any extreme metal bill. You know what I'm saying? I mean, black metal, doom metal, death metal, hardcore. We could probably fit on anything. And I'm probably more proud about that than anything else.
And
Forever Underground, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah.
Like still.
So
I mean, let me ask you something. Were you thrown back? I mean, when you first found out, were you a little thrown back?
No, I was excited. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is but I mean, I've always been kind of omnivorous in terms of like what I listen to. I kind of realized recently that I've always been more of an underground music fan than specifically like a death metal fan or a black metal fan or whatever. Like, there's a certain mentality that I like, and it crosses different genres. Like lately, I've even been getting into like weird old like prog rock or experimental music that had that same mentality. Guys who just wanted to make like crazy fucked up music and didn't really care what other people thought.
Yeah, exactly, man. I mean, and honestly, your answer probably represents 95% of the people out there that when they heard us, they were just excited to see Dave was back doing something. There's a small section, and I get it. I mean, I can't speak for Dave, but I get it. But the only thing I can say to those fans, hopefully you dig what he's doing, and come check it out. He's still shredding. He's still putting out powerful music.
I mean, not to have Dave dominate the conversation, even though Dave is a legend. Sorry to awkwardly put you on the spot like that. But
Where's my crown?
Hold on. Let's get that. Hold on.
But
Christian, bring that in, please.
But circa 2000, 2001, I was also seeing Grief, and so the idea that like these different worlds that I'd always been interested in were coming together in Churchburn was to me very exciting, and also a little bit vindicating, because I have friends who gravitate to one type of music or another, and that's natural. I think people like what they like, For me, like it was all like I put equal weight on all of it. Like I didn't think one was more underground or more true or more whatever than the other.
I've always said, and I'm very fortunate in my music career, if you can call it that. And I'm only a drummer. I play in a band where three other guys are multi-instrument playing individuals and great at it. I've always been very humbled by the experience, and I've always been able to play with, awesome musicians. In Grief, I got to play with, Jeff Haywood and them guys. I get to play with Dave Suzuki on a semi other daily basis. The guys at Sin of Angels were all great musicians. Todd Laskowski of Warhorse, in our early days of Rancid Christ. So I've always been very fortunate to play with these great musicians where, I smash the drums, I have a limited skill set.
You do it fucking awesome.
So in my mind anyway, so it's never lost on me that I get to play with, one of extreme music's great heroes,
So listeners should know that Dave is shaking his head. He's very uncomfortable by all the praise he's getting.
Yeah, hey, listen, man, I could tell you, I could sit here for hours and tell you stories right, about like, people coming up and, that their mind is, Dave will blow their minds away,
So Genocidal Right is out now through Translation and Lost Records. Guys, what's the best way to get the album?
Yes.
How can people order it?
So the best way to get it right now is through Translation Loss, through their websites or their Bandcamp. Right now, just like everybody else in the world, the vinyl is seeing a little bit delayed getting to the ground, but you can buy it digitally through their website. When we get our physical copies, you'll be able to get it through our Bandcamp, the Churchburn Bandcamp site. But yeah, it's available now. It's also available on all streaming platforms, Spotify, Apple, iTunes, Google Play, etc. But yeah, Translation Loss right now is the hub to be able to purchase it.
Mm-hmm.
And if people want to follow Churchburn online and send Dave a message telling him he's a legend and make him uncomfortable, what's the best way to do that?
Yeah, sure. So right now you can go to the Facebook page, Churchburn Doom, Facebook.com, or Instagram is Churchburn Doom. Also on the on Instagram, send us a message. Dave replies to everybody. Get in line if you want a guest solo spot. There's always a line for that.
Jesus.
But right now, yeah, Facebook, Churchburn Doom, and Churchburn Doom Instagram are the best ways to get in touch with us. And our Bandcamp. If you want to support the band, we have T-shirts up for sale right now, hats, everything. You want to, get some merch, churchburnbandcamp.com.
So you mentioned playing shows. Will you guys get to do any live events?
What's that? I'm sorry. Could you repeat that?
Will you guys get to play any shows or do any tours in support of the album?
Yeah, so we in July we played a show at Dusk in Providence, which is like our home base. Great show, great place, owned by some great people and run by some great people. We had a show in July. It was a great show, and it was the first time we were able to play some of these newer songs for people. It was a great turnout. It was, of course, it was an outdoor show. It was awesome. We did a show in Connecticut at Cherry Street Station, which is good. And we have an upcoming show, December 10th, which will be our record release show at Alchemy with Outer Heaven from Pennsylvania, Come to Grief, Edict, and New Hell, which are two newer local bands. Always a shout out to the local. There's a lot of great local bands around here on the come up in the Providence and Boston area. Always love to see new local acts coming up.
Very cool.
But that's it.
But December 10th, yeah, December 10th is we don't have anything planned for 2022 yet. We're hoping to, there's something in March that we're trying, we're talking to a couple bands, maybe going out for a little bit to see something. And then, it's a little tough. We don't have an agent, so it's pretty much me. I try and do all the booking, but no agent as of yet. So if you want us to come play, hit us up on Facebook and Instagram.
Let's see if we can do it.
Cool.
But right now, the major, we're focused on the record release show. It's going to be a great show. It's at Alchemy in Providence on Chestnut Street, and it's going to be a great night. There's a ticket link. We're expecting it to sell out because it's a pretty stacked bill. So if you want to come see us, the ticket links are everywhere. It's on Facebook. Come check it out.
When you see the Come to Grief guys, tell them I said hello.
Yeah, absolutely, man. They're great guys.
Yep.
Yeah. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
Thanks, man.
Yeah,
thanks for taking the time to talk to us, man. We love, we love interacting with everybody. I know sometimes, we don't do a lot of interviews or podcasts, but we do love doing them. Sometimes hopefully we'll get Timmy and Derek involved too. Timmy's a great guy. Derek's great guy too. They're definitely the heart and soul of Churchburn also. They've been with us a long time also. Give them guys a great shout out, because without them, we wouldn't be doing this either. Yep. And thanks to everybody, from me personally, for taking the time to buy a t-shirt, a hat, shake a hand, come see us play, do whatever, man. Without everybody out there supporting us, we wouldn't, this wouldn't be going on.
Exactly. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Forever Underground. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, man.
Thank you. Thanks, man. Thanks for having us.